An amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report. The gentleman from Florida reserves a point of order. Just waiting on the amendment. I don't know. I never wear it anyway, so I don't know. Means one of our grandkids gets a pin sooner than otherwise, right? That's how I do it. Just give them their family. I never wear it. I don't want people to.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the committee report for the resolution recommending.
Objection. The amendment will be considered as read. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a good faith effort to try to pass an amendment. This is an issue I've worked on when Democrats were in control, when Republicans were in control, so it's not a partisan issue to me. It's really an issue about reclaiming Congress's power. Prior to World War II, the Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that Congress has the power of inherent contempt. And what that allows Congress to do is when the executive branch, for example, the Department of Justice, if they don't enforce this subpoena, then there's really nothing that we can do. But there is actually something we can do. Through inherent contempt, Congress itself has authority under the Supreme Court law to fine witnesses and to even imprison witnesses. And so this paragraph simply puts in what the courts have said about Congress's inherent contempt power. Because as all of you know, the problem that's going to happen if this resolution of contempt gets voted off the House floor is that because Hunter Biden substantially complied with the subpoena and because of the ongoing Department of Justice investigation, there is no way the Department of Justice is going to actually enforce this contempt proceeding. And then there's nothing that Republicans can do. But with inherent contempt, we wouldn't need the Department of Justice. We can use Congress's own power to do that. And this simply puts in the Supreme Court rulings on that. And so this would then set forward, if we want to do in the future, to then pass legislation, which would actually just be a rules change to allow the House to execute our inherent contempt power. And with that, I yield.
Gentleman, yield for a question?
Sure, I'll yield for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Lieu. So if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Biden has Secret Service protection. Is that correct?
Yes.
So are you proposing to send the secret, or to send the Capitol, the Sergeant at Arms and presumably Capitol Police under his direction to go to the Secret Service and take Hunter Biden from their custody?
I'm glad you asked that. And so we've thought about this issue, and that's why the bill I have introduced, both last term when Democrats were in control and this term when Republicans were in control, is to use inherent contempt power to fine witnesses. So this would levy $25,000 fines on a witness for refusing to comply with a congressional subpoena and increase that amount depending on how recalcitrant the witness is.
Has that power ever been determined to exist by the United States Supreme Court, or is that a novel issue?
It is not a novel issue because the Supreme Court has already ruled that Congress has the power to imprison. And so if you have the power to imprison, then you would have the power to do lesser kinds of enforcement penalties.
Well, I'll say with respect to this, I'm not sure this is the correct vehicle for that, for your proposal, but I'm somewhat drawn to it. I believe that when Mr. Biden was parading in the halls earlier today, that would have been the solution. I think the Sergeant at Arms should have taken him into custody, and he should have been held in custody until he completed his obligation to testify. So I appreciate the suggestion. We're of one mind on the proper way to resolve this, but and so thanks for the suggestion. I would say I also think it would probably be somewhat speculative to believe that because there's a power to imprison for contempt, that there must be a power to fine. I will say that the law of my state on contempt is directly to the contrary. One's allowed and the other is, the fine is prohibited, according to what I understand. So I yield back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So reclaiming my time, I know this paragraph is simply silent on that issue. It just lays out what the Supreme Court has said about the inherent contempt power.
I'll withdraw my point of order.
Did the gentleman go back?